I'm going to tell you about my work. Essentially, it's about Black Genesis. It's a book I've published with Tom Brophy, a physicist who lives in San Diego. And we got together a couple of years ago, and we decided to publish this book with this rather provocative title. And I'll tell you all about it. But I'll introduce the background to it. Because there's a gang of us. Myself, John West, you know John West? No? John West of the Sphinx. Robert Schoch, they're the ones who made quite a stir about the age of the Sphinx in the early 1990s. Graham Hancock, come on, you all know Graham Hancock. Yes, you all know Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock and I have written 3 books together, and we're actually bringing another one out in a couple of weeks' time. So I may as well advertise it. It's called The Master Game, and it's a fun book, but I'll let you discover what it's all about. And I should add, a very nice colleague of mine who is here today, Andy Collins, who has joined the Pyramid Quest. We've all started a rather big stir in the early 90s, where we challenged the established views about Egypt, and more particularly about the origins of Egypt. We weren't the first ones to do this, of course. There have been others before us, but this kind of stirred the pot. It shook the apple tree, like John West says. And the reason is that we got on television. And we made a big splash. And BBC got involved, and NBC, and ABC, and Discovery Channel, you name it. They all loved this because it kind of provoked a situation. And the bottom line is that we were saying that ancient Egypt is probably much older than we think. Nothing more than that, but even that got the academic world very, very upset. And when I published my first book, The Orion Mystery, it's rather weird when you publish something that is original and kind of touches a vein. I knew it did because, boy, I had Egyptologists, I had archaeologists, I had philologists, I had everybody with an ist after his name trying to shoot me down. And if it was the 16th century, I would have been dragged in the street and probably burnt. But they couldn't do that. And so it went on for years, and I've been called all sorts of things, some rather weird ones. I mean, apart from charlatan and madman and liar, and there was a few odd ones like Zionist. That came from Mr. Hawass, Mr. Dr. Hawass, the ex, I'm very proud to say, Minister of Antiquities. Mr. Hawass used to say, I remember at the beginning, Robert Bauval, who is he? He comes here, that's his famous, he's Mr. Bauval, Mr. Y, Mr. X. They come here at the pyramids, they make a theory, they go back home, they drink a bit of beer, and that's it. And in 2 months, no, 1 month, they're gone with the wind. That was 15 years ago. We're still here. I hope you have the pleasure of hearing Graham Hancock one of these days here, but our battle cry is, when I ever call Graham Hancock, we say, we're still here. Yeah, so another little parable I like to say is that things can change dramatically in your life. We are all prone, and the opportunities are always there, even now perhaps. You take a left turn instead of a right turn, you go in one pub instead of another, you go in one shop, you take a holiday somewhere instead of another place, and things change. It's a life so full of opportunities. And one of the most dramatic change, and I call it the syndrome of the apple. You know the old story of Newton, the apple falls on his head and suddenly, boing, he thinks. He asks the question. When there is something that is an anomaly, like crop circles, somebody says, how do they do it? Well, he asked, why does an apple fall? Now, it's amazing that for thousands of years before him, apples fell, pears fell, plums fell, bricks fell, arrows fell, lots of things fell. But for some reason, nobody clicked to ask the question. But asking the question isn't enough, of course. He pursued it. And sometimes when you pursue something like this, it's very much against the odds, because you're going to go against the established view. We know all these stories, Galileo and Copernicus and you name it. But somehow he did pursue it. And the reason we're here and I'm talking through a mic and we're going to the moon and soon to Mars is because he asked the question. It's quite amazing. One simple question. And it led to the discovery of gravity, laws of mechanics, and we may one day fly to the stars. Well, we all have this precarious apple that hangs on our heads, this symbolic apple. Whatever your apple is, if it ever falls, pursue it. I'm serious. A lot of people say, well, we'll leave it to others. You know, if it's a scientific question, let the scientists work it out, and so forth. I gave a talk in London the other day on cosmology. And people say, okay, cosmology, but it's for the astrophysicists and the physicists, and they study the galaxies and the stars and the origins of the universe and so forth. No, cosmology is every single one of us. Every single one of us, including the Pope, and President Obama and President Mubarak, have the fundamental questions that are cosmological. Where do we come from? Who are we? What are we? And where do we go once the body dies? They're fundamental questions, and that the answer of these questions, or the pursuit of the question, is cosmology. Our scientists are looking there, and they send Hubble, and they take pictures, and I'm very privileged to know some of the cosmologists in this country. You have some very good ones, Chandra Wickramasinghe at Cardiff, and a variety of others. Kaku Michu in the States. We had Carl Sagan. You remember Carl Sagan of Cosmos? Carl Sagan said something fantastic. He brought it down to one phrase, one statement to describe what we are. He said, we are star stuff. What amazing. We are star stuff. There's a star some 4, 5, 6 billion years ago, somewhere out there in our galaxy that blew up. And it's part of its matter got captured by our star, which is the sun, formed the planets. And billions of years afterwards, here we are. We are star stuff, but I add just one more little word. We are star stuff, become conscious. What an amazing thing we are. That's each one of us. And it seems to me that the knowledge of everything is not out there. It's in our own cosmos. We are made of the matter that the universe was created. It's in us. We tend to take things for granted. As I am wondering about here, I'm actually performing the laws of gravity. And I don't think about it. There you are. My brain has worked it out perfectly. As you pick up, as you play tennis, as you play golf. See those guys who play golf in this tournament and they shoot a ball and boy, they worked out everything, the the air friction, the pressure of the board. It's amazing. It's quite amazing. And yet they do not only think about it. If you ask them to sort of explain it scientifically, they don't. They can't. I remember once, I mean, here is how weird it is. You put some sugar on a spoon, and you take a little lick, and you taste sugar. We all know what sugar tastes like. Now, a scientist decided that he was going to explain in an equation, in an organic equation, what sugar tastes like. And he produced 300 pages. 300 pages of equations, sorry, to explain what sugar tastes like. You don't even have to explain it. It's there. You can do it in a fraction of a second. I say this because at my age, I've become extremely conscious that not only we're extremely mysterious, but we're extremely precious. We each are endowed and equipped to have an exciting life on this planet. So I'm going to tell you about my apple. It's not an apple. It's actually a photograph. Can we... Oh. Okay, let's leave this one. Next one. All right. Now, the established view, you're looking at the plain of the Nile Valley in floods. It's a picture taken from an air balloon in 1872, when the Nile still floods, but when the flood actually reached Lower Egypt in the Cairo area. But since 1965, they built a dam which blocks the natural flood. Apparently, the dam blocks 11 floods. God forbid if it ever breaks, because even one flood, a big flood, would cause havoc. And you're looking at, if you look at the top there, can you see it faintly? More to the left there, more to the right there. Oh, I'm going to point it, I forgot. Somewhere there, right? See that? Is the plain, no? Well, look, it's on the top right, okay? You can't see it, it has to be dark. Yeah, okay. Well, up there is the plain of Giza, and without pyramids. I've actually did a bit of, how do you call this, Photoshop stuff. So here is the story, and we're going to condense it in a matter of seconds, and you're going to move the 3 slides very fast. Can you go ahead? Because we're going to build the pyramids very quickly. Ready? Well, Egyptologists have argued for years, you know, they were built in 20 years, in 10 years, in 50 years, and there's all these arguments, and they used 100,000 slaves, and now they say, no, they used 20,000, and the fact is that they built it. And just by curiosity, how many of you have been to Egypt and saw the pyramids? Quite a few, huh? Well, for those who have, you know what I mean. It's a hit. I've lived 3 years, from 2005 to 2008. I've lived many years in Egypt, but I lived from 2005 to 2008, literally in front of the Great Pyramid. I had a flat overlooking the Great Pyramid. I saw it in the morning, in the evening, at breakfast, at lunchtime, in the dark, with lights, in winter, in summer. I've had a belly full of the Great Pyramid. And I can tell you that. You wake up in the morning and you go there with your cup of coffee and you think, it shouldn't be there. It's too big. Really. It's too large. It's too perfect. It's provocative. It's a giant question mark that looms there in front of you. And maybe that's what it is, like your crop circles. It's provoking us. It's the ultimate apple. Ask the questions. Who put it there? When? And the one that I got interested in is why? Why build this? And it stunned me that these fundamental questions of a monument of that size, I will talk about it in a minute, were not properly asked. It was all wrapped up in a nice consensus, some megalomaniac pharaohs. Where is Hugh Newman? I was going to say megalithomania pharaohs, but build this. They wanted to build giant tombs to impress their population, and so they did. They mobilized their nation for dozens of years, and they built this tomb. Can we have the next one? There's a nice view of Giza at night. It's one of those things. There's a friend of mine who owns a small guest house. Literally, the picture is taken from his balcony. If you ever go there, try and visit Gouda Fayed. He's a friend of ours. We go very often. He has this view all the time. And Gouda says he stopped looking at it because it's so damn provocative. You know, it's very funny with Egyptians around the pyramids. They stopped looking at it because you can't. You know, the answers don't come out, and eventually you ignore it. A bit like, I suppose, with crop circles, no? When suddenly scientists got bored with it, they think, no, it's easier to say it's just some nutcases doing it, and that's it. Because to ask the questions is so provocative. It's so provocative. I wasn't going to talk about crop circles, but Francine showed a picture at the end of her talk, and I can tell you, I used to be a land surveyor and a building surveyor for many, many years, and if this was done overnight, there's no way. Now, I don't know who and what and how, but you can't do this. You can't set out something like this. It'll take weeks, if not months. I used to set out buildings, hospitals, airports, and I can tell you, we spend weeks and weeks and weeks doing this. So that alone needs an explanation. It demands an explanation. And it's left, you know, where are the scientists working on this? It's quite amazing. Well, with the pyramids, there they were, Egyptologists, you know, that's it, you know, their tombs, and bye-bye. Thank you very much. Well, the problem is this. This is the problem as far as I'm concerned. Can we move one slide? Is you're looking at an overhead view of the Great Pyramid. Now, I'm not going to go into all these statistics. You can put St. Paul's Cathedral and all this stuff in it. But let me give you just a few, because the scale of this monument is literally frightening. I was with a friend at Stonehenge. Now, the ampler of Stonehenge, the actual circle, I don't know, estimated about 30 meters. You know, the size of this, a bit more than this room, right? No, maybe twice this room. This room is about 20 meters, right? The base, the base of the pyramid, the base. Each side is 230 meters. You would put about, I don't know, 15 Stonehenges next to each other. That's the size of this structure. It's 146 meters high, but that's not just its size that frightens and awes. It's precision. I usually like to give this little analogy. I bought this on a British Airways flight, my watch. It's one of these secondas you buy at 60 pounds. It's been a very, very good watch. It's worked for years. I've changed the batteries every 4 years, and it's fine. And they tell me that it's accurate within 5 seconds a month. I'm happy. 5 seconds a month. I mean, I don't have any appointments that require that kind of accuracy. No, I'm happy with 5 seconds a month. But if I wanted this to be 100,000th of a second, I'd pay millions and millions of pounds. I'd need an atomic watch to do that kind of precision. This is the difference between high precision and normal precision. In any industry, they know this. Well, this is a high precision pyramid. It's accurate to 3 arc minutes. That's the accuracy. It's 5% of a single degree. Let me give you an idea. You put a dartboard there, and you put me there, and you give me a dart, and you cover my eyes, and I shoot the dart, and I hit the bullseye. That's its accuracy. It's true. And they're supposed to have done this. Well, I'm not sure. According to the Egyptologists, they had nothing. They had brutal force and sticks. They didn't even have the wheel, no pulley, no iron tools. There is 2.5 million blocks in this structure, each weighing an average of 2 tons. And I'm not even mentioning the king's chamber that contains blocks weighing 60 to 70 tons apiece, brought from Aswan. They're granite blocks, and they've been moved to a height of 50 meters. It's quite incredible. Egyptologists are not stirred by this. Well, I can tell you, engineers, architects are puzzled. And I don't know if I have time to talk about everything I want to tell you, but this isn't just, Andy knows this. There are temples, which are known as the mortuary temple and the valley temples, prosaically. These temples are built with blocks between 50 tons and 200 tons. Now, I'm going to give you an idea what a 200-ton block is, apart from its size. If you take 400 family cars and you squish them together, that's a 200-ton block. Today, we would have a serious problem moving a 200-ton block, let alone lift it up and place it to build a temple. And besides, you don't need a 200-ton block to build a temple. You can build it very nicely with little blocks, like we build houses. So not only they use these blocks, but they're so damn provocative. They didn't have to use them. That's the questions. If you can tell me, and I haven't found the answer, if somebody can tell me in future times why they use 200-ton blocks, you've broken a key here. Well, obviously they did. The question is why? Now, let me tell you what. Sorry?
Sound resonance.
Well, yeah, there's many ideas. But it's the equivalent, okay, it's raining outside, and instead of taking your umbrella, you take your whole wardrobe with you. Makes sense. And you see yourself carrying a wardrobe, and why?
To give us a puzzle.
Okay, you can ask me this at the end. But I'm saying this because there are, and these are very obvious, provocative questions. The one that needs to be answered, and that's the one I approached, is that the accuracy of this monument towards the cardinal directions is so precise, that it demands an explanation. Because building a pyramid that size is already a huge problem. Building a high-tech pyramid multiplies the problem 100-fold, like the watch. It demands to be answered. And I decided to somehow try and answer it. Can we move? Fuzz? You're looking at a graphic image of the inside of the pyramids. You probably know all this, but let me go very fast. The entrance is in the north. You have a so-called subterranean chamber. You go up a ascending corridor, along a horizontal corridor into the Queen's chamber, and then into this marvelous grand gallery, those who have visited know what I mean, and break into the King's chamber. And the thing that I will focus on, and it's the big deal, by the way, I'll tell you at the end, is those very narrow shafts that shoot out from the south and north walls of these chambers. So that's the inside. Nobody yet has provided a suitable explanation why they had to have this kind of interior. And no one, I can tell you because I was deeply involved with this since 1993 when the famous door, remember the door that was discovered? At the end of this shaft, at the end of the southern shaft, nobody has come up with a logical, reasonable explanation why they build those shafts, let alone put the door at the end of the ones in the Queen's chamber. And by the way, Queen's chamber and King's chamber is just names that we give to these things. It's Egyptologists have called it the Queen's chamber and the King's chamber because they have no idea what these chambers are about. Can we have the next one? Well, what we began to find out, before my time actually, is that these shafts had stellar alignments. This was discovered in 1964 by Virginia Trimble and Alexandra Badawi. She is now, or was until recently, the head of the Astronomical Union in the United States. Very, very prominent astronomer who got involved, literally involved. She was having a lovely love affair with Alexandra Badawi. Alexandra Badawi, who died quite a few years ago, a rather famous Egyptologist. It turned out the perfect combination because he was an architect and Egyptologist, and she was an astronomer. And they posed the question, well, what are these shafts for? And she, as an astronomer, began to sense that, well, they might have alignments because the monument is perfectly aligned, it's aligned to the cardinal direction, there might be something, and it's pointing to, the first clue was the northern shafts, because they're very obviously pointing to what we call the circumpolar region, where there is the polar star. In those days, the pole star was Thuban, Alpha Draconis. Today it's Polaris. Well, I'll go into that later. Because of precession, the stars shift. Incidentally, because of precession, you might be interested, I was going to tell this yesterday, was the heliacal rising of Sirius. So happy birthday, Sirius. It's the new year of the Egyptians. It's when the star Sirius would rise after 70 days of invisibility. Big feasts in Egypt in ancient times. But it used to be in the summer, around the summer solstice, and it's moved now 45 days. A little aside. This gave them a clue that there's something to do with the stars. And Virginia Trimble worked out, that was in 1964, that the southern shaft of the King's chamber pointed to Orion's belt. And they published, and it was more or less well embraced by Egyptologists at the time. For some reason, they did not bother to check the alignment of the southern shaft of the Queen's chamber below. And this is where something can go wrong in the pursuit of your apple. Some expert comes and says, this chamber is abandoned. I'm the expert, I know. And they accepted this. Do you follow? I'll tell you a good one. I remember Rainer Steidelmann, who was in charge of the operation of the exploration of the door, said, there's nothing behind that door. And the BBC man who was interviewing said, oh, well. And then I nudged him and I said, ask Dr. Steidelmann, how does he know that there's nothing behind the door? You know, does he have X-ray vision? Did he live in ancient Egypt? Did he build the door himself? I don't know. So, and he said, Mr. Bauval, don't be cheeky. I'm Mr. Steidelmann. I'm the expert. Now they're saying the opposite, by the way. Never. If you believe in what you've got, never accept that somebody is an expert. They've been notoriously wrong. Notoriously wrong. There is a lovely book that is actually written, believe it or not, by the Institute of Expertology. Check it out. It's published in New York by two journalists. And they collected all these experts from ancient times to modern times. And there's some real gems here. You've got, well, you know, the captain of the Titanic. It's never going to sink. The one I really like is the officer who led the charge of the Light Brigade. He said, trust me. It's true. So, of course, we listen to experts, but do not get stopped because an expert says you're on the wrong track. Because if we did, much of what we know today won't happen. Well, they didn't. And I came in 1987. I was living in Australia at the time, and not surprisingly, as you will see, the lower shaft pointed to the star Sirius. All right? I'll explain why in a second. Can we move? Now, what we see throughout Egyptian texts is a constant relationship between this design, and you can see, if you know a bit of the sky, it represents the Big Dipper, what you call here the plow, which is lovely visible, by the way, at this time of year, if you look north, or northeast and northwest, depending on the time of the night. Very, very striking. And since we're going to talk about Orion, if you get up at dawn, no, actually an hour before dawn, and you look east, and if the sky is clear, you're going to see Orion dominating the eastern sky this time of year. And it's about to herald the rising of Sirius, which hasn't still occurred in this latitude that we're in, about a week's time. So if you get a clear sky and you're willing to get up at dawn, have a look. It's very dramatic. You get very clear skies in England, by the way, if you don't get the rains and all that. Well, always representation of the northern sky with the Big Dipper, and on the southern sky, they represent the southern sky by Orion. They call him Sa. He is a man standing up. He was identified to one of their gods, Osiris, and here the star Sirius represented by the goddess Isis. You find this always on sarcophagi. You'll find them on the top of ceilings in royal tombs. If you're going to visit the royal tombs, check. Which is clearly what we're seeing in the pyramid, but not in design. There is shafts pointing in the direction. Can we go 2 slides back and make sure another one? Back. The northern sky and the southern sky. So the pyramid, in a sense, is not mute. By the way, one of the things about this pyramid, which I should have said, is that it does not contain any texts. It doesn't contain any text inside and out. Maybe I should say that it does contain a bit of graffiti in the so-called relief chambers. And in this graffiti, there is a faint suggestion that it is Khnum Khufu, the name of the pharaoh of the 4th dynasty, Cheops, although they don't know who Khnum is, and they assume that it's him who built the pyramid. Well, it's okay, it might be, but if you go at Piccadilly, well, you used to, I don't know if they've cleaned it up, if you go at Piccadilly Underground, or the Empire State Building, or in many of these buildings, you might see Kilroy was here, right? So we will assume that Kilroy built all these buildings. To go on faint graffiti, which is very rough and to jump to this conclusion, it might have been built in the time of Cheops. But we can't conclude simply on that. But what the pyramid does, it kind of eloquently speaks not in text, but with the language of astronomy, or as I like to say, astrophysics. We seem to think that the verbal word and the written word is the only way we communicate. Not so. Not so. Apparently only 5% of what we say is communication. The pyramid speaks. And I realized this, and I said, I'm going to make it speak. I'm going to try and make it say, or at least say a few things, using that astroglyphic language. And therefore, I had to study astronomy, which I did. But it's not difficult, some very basic, elementary astronomy, just observation astronomy. Okay, can we move ahead? Another one? And it's not surprising, well, it is surprising that pyramids of the following dynasty, let me fix you up in time. Pyramids of Giza are supposed to be built, according to the Egyptologists, in the 4th dynasty by 3 kings, Cheops, Khephren, and Menkaura, or Khufu, and Khafra, depending how you want to call them. 3 kings, 4th dynasty, at the early stage of Egyptian civilization, and kings that followed, kings of the 5th dynasty, although built very, very shoddy pyramids, much smaller pyramids, in some 10 kilometers south of the Great Pyramid. But in contrast with the Giza pyramids, these are full of texts. There is 5 royal pyramids, and we call them 5 text-bearing pyramids. And they constitute what we call today the pyramid texts. And you're seeing one of them, that's the pyramid of Unas. You can visit today the pyramid of Teti. Well, I don't know after the revolution, but it should still be open. And literally see those texts. They're the oldest religious texts in the world, by the way. And they're original, have been interpreted, translated, or they are original. And they speak again of these 2 regions of the sky. And they speak of these 2 regions of the sky, the southern sky with the stars of Orion, and can we move one slide up? Here's a nice view of them. They're pristine, by the way. It's really eerie how they carve those texts by hand, and some of the details is extraordinary. This is one of the things that's very impressive in ancient Egypt, is the precision. Everything is done. They had hundreds of these Michelangelos about, it seems. Thousands. Okay, next. And well, if you read some of it, it becomes fairly obvious that what they want is the king, or rather the dead king, through ritual, to become a star, or what you would call an astral spirit. And he would join Orion. And they tell us very clearly, can we move the next slide, that in fact Orion is identified, I can't see it here. Next one. Oh, well. The mythology, and I don't want to go through this because I'm sure you've been through it so many times, but very briefly, the Egyptians believed that there had been a creation, the cosmos was created, the sun god prevailed, many generations of deities. Finally, 4 deities are sent to earth, Osiris and Isis, and Set and Nephthys. They form 2 couples. Osiris and Isis become the first man or human gods to rule Egypt. Every single pharaoh believed to be a reincarnation of the son of Isis and Osiris, the god Horus. The story goes that Osiris was killed by his jealous brother. Isis, in her trauma, manages to bring him back to life and posthumously becomes pregnant and gives birth to Horus. Horus is the first king man of Egypt, and each pharaoh adamantly believed that he was reincarnated Horus. 400 generations of pharaohs, by the way. When you think that they only found a few, Tutankhamun, one of them. So where are they all? God knows. That is the, it's not just the essential mythology, if you like, the nativity story. It is the principle of kingship. A king has to be proclaimed a living Horus. But when he dies, he himself joins Osiris in the sky and becomes himself a star in Orion because they identified Osiris to Orion. So that's in a nutshell. It's much more complicated than that, but this is the essence of it. So clearly, oops, fuzzy. Can we go back? So clearly, there is something to do with this pyramid and these stars. I mean, it's sequence of logic. Can we move here? A friend of mine did this wonderful graphic where he removed the structure of the pyramid and left the rooms and the shafts. And if you could see through the structures, at a time when these stars would cross the southern sky, cross the meridian, as we say, that's what you would see. The pyramid, in a sense, is umbilically tied to these stars. These shafts, as I like to call them, and many Egyptologists do, are channels to the stars. I've got this thing about Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan saying we are star stuff. And you know why I get the oogie-boogies when I'm saying this? I do. I don't have much hair in my head, but I get it at the back of my neck. Is because they seem to have worked out in a different way what we know today. it seems that they explored the inner cosmos, what we call Gnostic search. There is two forms of searches. There is the outside one, and there is the inner cosmos. There's a whole cosmos in there. And one of the things I think we ought to do, I don't know how exactly, is to explore the inner world. Because the answers are there. They seem to have found things that are extraordinary. Not just this, many things. They seem to have found a way, perhaps through ritual, perhaps through, and they seem to need, this is the weird thing, they seem to need this hardware of the pyramids. The pyramids are the hardware of a very elaborate metaphysical science. This is a metaphysical machine, and it needs the software, to use jargon. And the software, I'm very convinced, is the initiated man or woman. You don't enter this pyramid just to take photographs. If you are initiated, and that's what I try to do on my tours, by the way, we'll announce one, is, okay, they would take 20 years, I take 10 days to just, but even just enough to know when you enter a pyramid that you enter the belly of a star. And it has directions. Just knowing this, and it begins to work. It begins to activate. And the processor, what seems to constantly go round and round and round and round, is the sky. You live on a planet. You live on a globe. And it has motions. It rotates on its axis every 24 hours, right? Please tell me right. It revolves around the sun in 365 and a quarter, or a bit less than a quarter days. It does that. It's been doing that for billions of years. And it wobbles. Very slowly. Very slowly. In 26,000 years, performed one of these wobbles. We call this precession of the equinoxes. And because it does this, we're here. Because it does this, we have this wonderful world and lakes and rivers and oceans and mountains and birds and trees and crocodiles and the whole lot. Because if it didn't do that, it wouldn't be the same world. The planet seems to be designed. And it may sound weird. I mean, I find it very strange to use this word. But I was speaking to Mika Kaku, the Japanese cosmologist, and he told me something that spooked me. He said, the edge of cosmological thinking is that we've arrived at this conclusion, Robert. I can go for hours and blow your mind, but basically the conclusion is that this universe, not just this planet, this universe holds on two constants, the speed of light and the gravitational constant. If you tweak one by a zillionth of a fraction, this universe doesn't work. Conclusion is, either it's designed, or there is an infinite number of universes, and we happen to be the one that works, or at least works for us. It's an amazing conclusion. I'm not quite sure which one I go for. I'd rather the designed one. Seems more containable for me. Or maybe both. This is where we're at. This is where we are. And this is what these people seem to somehow try and use. They're using the movement of the planets, the precession. They seem to have built some sort of machine, and they seem to be very convinced that this will launch them after death to the stars, to return back to their primordial origins. And just, it may be possible. It's worth pursuing. It's worth trying to understand these people, because you don't, let me tell you, it's hard to press this point, but you don't build this monument without the highest, the absolute highest motive. It's too much. All right? It's just too much. We must attribute it to it the highest motive. And the motive persisted, because if they didn't really believe in this, they wouldn't have gone through all this. They just didn't build one, they built two, they built three, they built 25 royal pyramids. You must believe in it. You must be absolutely sure that what you're doing is going to work. So these are the way to approach these subjects. And like I said, many of us are pushing this. Forget the consensus. We need to break open these studies, because we've got the legacy of an amazing civilization, and here too. And we're not really bothering. Okay, next one. I'm not going too hard on you. One of those hard moves. All right, well, here we come to those famous 3 stars where the shaft points. And, well, that's Orion's belt enlarged. And you've got Zeta Orionis, Epsilon, and Delta. Or right, these 3 stars of Orion's belt. For some reason, the text and the pyramid is locked into that. And you can see this position. 2 rather bright stars and a less bright one, which is offset to the left. And can we move one slide? Right. That's my apple. It's just too damn weird. 2 large pyramids with the little one offset. It's known now as the Orion correlation theory. And boy, has it upset a lot of the academics. They just didn't expect this. It came from left field. I remember when we showed it on BBC in '94, I got a call from the producer who was absolutely shocked. He said, "What have you done, Robert?" They're calling from everywhere. People were on the edge of their seat because suddenly they saw something that should have been seen. It's one of those strange things. We knew of the shaft since '64. We knew of the texts for almost 100 years. And it's damn there. Well, like I said, they didn't like it. The public embraced it, they loved it. I mean, it was very obvious. But boy, academics. Luckily, I was heavily supported by the late Professor Edwards, the man who brought the Tutankhamun exhibition here, Sir Ivan Edwards, who died a few years ago. And they were the Egyptologists were rather taken aback because he came on the BBC program and lent quite a bit of support on this idea. So it caused quite a stir. Can we move ahead? There you see the correlation. Now, where Hancock and I got together in '95 was that when you looked at this correlation, although you had a similar pattern, the angle that the belt stars made was rather different from what was on the ground. They were a rather sharp angle. And you know this feeling when you go at somebody's dinner party and you're sitting at the table and across the wall there is a painting or a picture and it's slightly off? You know what I mean? You know this feeling? Like you can't, I mean, you wait for everybody to sort of look somewhere else and you just go and, you know, it's damn annoying. Well, first of all, you know, this you know, you feel like moving this pyramid a bit, put it in line with the others. You know, this little offset is so annoying. And then this angle, you wanted to, well, you can't. You can't turn the stars, that's one thing for sure. You can't turn the pyramids. You could try, but the stars, you cannot move them. Well, you can. Actually, you can. You can move them if you go back in time. And here is the leap. The leap. Egyptologists said the pyramids are built in 2500 BC and that's it. And I said to Graham, let's just go and see. Whoopsie-dopsie. I mean, I'm having enough trouble with this theory as it is. If you start talking about a different time, it's going to be bad. But what it boiled down to is this, is that we reasoned out from the text that these stars are identified to Orion's belt, and Orion's belt is identified, these pyramids, and these Orion's belt is identified to the god Osiris. And the god Osiris was supposed to have come down. 5 minutes, bad. Give me 10. Are you bored with this? You're having fun? I don't know. Having fun, huh? Let them have fun. 12. I come from Egypt. Sorry? Yeah, keep going. I have to move a bit faster here. But might not be able to do black Genesis. But that's the fun bit. So what we said is they speak about what is known, and Andy knows very well. There's a term in ancient Egypt that is used very often to describe the origins of their civilization. They call it Zep Tepi. It literally translates as the first time. And the first time of when Osiris and Isis ruled and established pharaonic civilization. And this first time, well, when is it? And we reason that because of precession, because of this cycle. Now, what happens to when you observe, you can run it on any astronomical program, they're very cheap these days. If you run it and you put the stars in the south, you'll find that they go down and they go up and they go down and they go up in cycles of 26,000 years. There is a low part, a nadir, and there is a high point. We're near the high point, by the way, now. The low point could be the beginning. Let's try it, we said. And as we went tick-tock, 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 I remember we did the program for Discovery Channel, not only they started going down, but they started adjusting themselves. And when we reach the bottom line, the nadir, 10,500 BC, blong, you get a correlation. Now, before we publish anything like this, let's make damn sure. We got several programs and we tried all this. But there was something very, 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 very inviting about this, is that not only the stars are locked with the pyramids, but the Milky Way redressed itself and seemed like to be a projection of the Nile. I'll show you in a minute. And even more interestingly, they locked at a very specific time of the year, which was the spring equinox. And immediately we thought, spring equinox, that means the sun is rising due east at that time. Precisely when the stars are on the meridian. Perfect lock. And of course, immediately we said, due east, boy, there is another monument that is looking due east on that site. And that is the Great Sphinx. Can we have the next one? Here, as you can see it more in stellar terms. You can try it out. Huh? I mean, this is all falsifiable. I mean, it's not. All right, next slide. We'll have to move a bit faster. Okay. Now, not only, here is the lock. Orion's belt in the south, matching the pyramid, the Nile with the Milky Way, and the sun rising due east, and in the sky, at that time, only at that time, was the constellation of Leo. It only worked for that time. There seemed to have been some sky image that was projected on the ground. It may be a coincidence, but it's 1,000,000 to 1 coincidence in my books. And so we published it. We wrote Keeper of Genesis. And boy, did they get upset. Really upset, because the astronomy worked, it fitted the text, but the date, they did not like it. Egyptian history began at best in 3000 BC. There was nobody there. There was no one there. Couldn't be. Annoyingly for them, at the time we were doing this, came John West and Robert Schoch with their geological theory, arguing that the Sphinx was much, much older. And now we had two sciences, hard sciences, astronomy and geology, bugging the Egyptologists big time. And they had to deal with it. Put it in your pipe and smoke it, we said. they're still dealing with it. Well, they first tried to ignore it. The well-known astronomer Archie Roy, who was one of your famous astronomers here from Glasgow University, who's not well at the moment, a disciple of Alexander Thom, one of the founders of archaeoastronomy, came on one of my programs and said, well, you know, the usual thing, they say first, you're mad, then they say, well, let's look at it, and then they say, well, we don't like it. And then they say, it kind of works. And then they ignore it and say, well, we knew about it all along. It's there. It's naggingly there. The pyramid complex is begging us to pursue this date. And even more, this is where we thought, wait a minute, so what? They did this date, and so what is it? What, I mean, all this trouble for what? And then we began to think, and I'm not going to go into that because we won't have time. We began to think that this is a map. It's like your crop circles. It's a map. There's a message there. And instead of us, yeah, I mean, don't look at the sky. Come on, look on the ground. We're telling you that here is the whole story. This says 10,000 BC sun. Below the Sphinx. And we do know, since 91, that there's a possibility of chambers below the Sphinx, apart from the possible chambers inside the pyramid. And it's amazing, and we're still waiting. They're waiting. Why? Because they say, no, it's not possible. It doesn't have to do with 10,000 BC. Where is the evidence? Where are the potsherds? Where are the bones of the people? Where is everybody in 10,000 BC? We had to say, well, they've got a point there. We said, it's your problem. We have worked this out. Now you're going to look for the bones. You're going to look for whatever. But they didn't. And everything changed. And we won't have time. But everything changed in 1974, and more particularly in 1998, when they found naphtha playa. You've heard of naphtha playa? Good. I'll tell you about naphtha playa briefly. Can we move fast here? We're going to have to skip here. It's a place here. Naphtha playa, and remember this. This is going to change world history. In 1974, a group of anthropologists, Americans, stopped their four-wheel drive with a bunch of students to have what they called a comfort break. They were stopping for a pee. And while they were having their comfort break, they noticed that there were these strange stones all around. They discovered naphtha playa. It's become the most interesting place in the world. It's not Stonehenge, it's a mini Stonehenge in the desert. You'll see pictures of it. But the information it carries baffled us. Because it's been dated to thousands of years, at least 6,000, at least 3,000 BC, 3,000 years before the pyramid. At least. We think now even more. And the knowledge that is contained in the pyramid, the alignments to Orion, to Sirius, is in this complex. We didn't expect this at all. Who did this? Who are these people? And this was a mission that I undertook. Fuzzy came half of the way, by the way. All right? Here. Can you see my projection here? There is a very, very eerie region there. It's called Gilf Kebir and Uwainat. And amazingly, have you seen The English Patient, by the way, the film? You know where she dies in the cave? She's supposed to die in the cave of the swimmers, which is at Gilf Kebir. Amazingly, we didn't know these places existed till the 1920s. And the reason we didn't know is nobody could get there. Even today, it's one hell of a trip. Of course, if you have a helicopter or a plane. But to go from the nearest oasis, you came with us up to Dakhla, didn't you? To drive here, which is 700 kilometers, takes you 4 nights and 5 days with four-wheel drive. It is what we call the open desert. And I wish I had more time, because the open desert is something else. Being in the desert is one thing. being in the open desert. Being in the open desert will change your life, change mine. You lose touch of civilization completely, and you're there with the sparsest of needs, a sort of Franciscan experience. You know, all you need is a bit of water and food, but this contact with a primordial world, and more interestingly and more excitingly, a contact with the lost people, people who built Naphtali, because we found not only evidence of their presidents, they left us their images. We can actually see how they look like, and they look great. Really sexy people, tall, black, with a very unusual face. Very unusual face. Can we move fast? I'll have to move fast. I'll have to skip some of the story, but this is the so-called Abu Bala Strait. If you read Black Genesis, which I hope you will, it's just been launched here in England, it tells the second chapter is a very large one. It tells the whole background, this romantic background of the discovery of these places. It really is a romance. And usually it's British people, mad dogs and Englishmen. And this is one of them. He discovered what is known as the Abu Balas Hill, which mystified people until recently. He found a hill. Can you go? Well, yeah. This is pictures of the original. He took the pictures. I'm trying to remember. Howard King, he was called. And he found this hill and a lot of these strange jars full of them, about 200 of them, all around the hill. Nobody understands what they were there for. We know now. Well, we know now that there were water stations, like fuel stations. It's the only way you can travel in this desert. Even today, you have to have stations. And that's why the Egyptologists didn't think they could make it, because they didn't understand that the ancient Egyptians had worked this one out. Can we move fast? And here is a very romantic fellow, which you'll hear a lot about in my book, and we're thinking of making a film out of him. He is your Omar Sharif, Rudolph Valentino, built into one. He's you're going to love this. He was educated at Balliol College in Oxford. He was a champion, Olympic champion of fencing. And of all things, quite a romantic fellow. He actually seduced the Queen of England, the Queen of Egypt. And they say he married in secret. Anyway, but his great passion was the desert. And he organized one of the most daring, in fact, the only daring expedition of its kind. He actually did it by camel to reach. Well, he went there hearing that there were these Shangri-Las in the desert, and he reached, can we move? His name is Ahmed Hassanain Bey. Ahmed Hassanain Bey. He spoke perfect English. Wonderful fellow. He died young, by the way. He died at 46, a car crash, driving his Jeep, and he hit an army tank, apparently, or something like that. His journey starts, very, very distant on the Mediterranean, and comes along the Libyan border, and he finds this zone, this small mountain zone, which he called Uwainat. It means little eyes. The Egyptians call eyes wells, or rather ponds. They imagine that there are eyes from the earth. So he called it Uwainat, the little eyes. It's the only place in all this vast open desert that has a bit of water. And during the Second World War, it was a big prize because it's the only way to cross into Egypt from Libya. So you find a lot of remnants of World War II cars and all over the place. Amazingly, in perfect order. Nothing rusts there. There is no humidity, nothing. Yeah, it's amazing. You find engines like you could use them. You find prehistoric artifacts on the sand, untouched, like the moon. It's really eerie. Okay, let's move fast. He came across, this was supposed to be totally uninhabited, but he came across these people. Apparently, one day he woke up while he was camping, and this girl, apparently that's her, appeared and had a bowl of milk. And she spoke a very mysterious language we know now is ancient Tebu, the language of the Sahara people. And she said to him in this blurred language, luckily he had a Bedouin who understood it roughly, that they had a king. Totally amazed, and she took him to the king. His name was Harry, apparently. Can we move? Here are these people. Can we move faster? And Harry said to Hassanain, we've been here a long time. Long time. He said, in fact, our ancestors left us their images. And when he took Hassanein to see the images, Hassanein got a shock because there was fauna that wasn't supposed to be there. Elephants, giraffes, lions, ostriches, faunas that can only exist today at least 1,000 kilometers south into Central Africa. And so he reported this to the National Geographic, and wow, we understood that that's the beginning of understanding that the Sahara was fertile, had water. It was a very different place. And we move faster. I'll have to, I'm enjoying this. You're enjoying this? Yes. Come on, give me some encouragement, huh? Yes, okay. We're nearly finished. I'll have to move very, very fast, but essentially, I want to show you the people, but can we have the one that you had? This is another explorer, is one of the princes of Egypt who declined the throne, Prince Kamal ad-Din, to become a desert explorer in the footsteps of Hassanein Bey. And he built the very first four-wheel drive. It's built by the Ford company. But he did, rather than go through the Libyan border, he went straight trying to go to Waynat, this small mountain zone, and he discovered something even bigger. He discovered Gilf Kebir, which is the size of Switzerland. If you can imagine Switzerland without any trees today, it's the size of Switzerland. It's 300 kilometers long and 80 kilometers wide. Can we move? It's here. Hassanein missed it because he traveled at the back. You couldn't see it. Next slide. And of course, I had to go there. I just had to go there. And we did an expedition in 2008, in April 2008. And it changed my life. I mean, when you reach those places, you've landed on Mars. You have landed on Mars. In fact, they use NASA used this region to do tests for their Mars mission because it has the same, apparently, geology. Can we move? Oh, there's another English crazy mad dog. Major Ralph Bagnall. His sister was the one who wrote National Velvet, by the way. Weird connection. And he went there. It was pretty nice. I like his hat. And of course, he had these cars, and they got stuck God knows how many times. Even today, we get stuck a lot. We go over dunes and valleys, and wow. Move. And he found what is known, it was the first circle that was found. Stone circles in the desert. They're 8,000 years old. Astronomical alignments to the solstices, to the equinoxes. Can we move? Oh, there's the original English patient, Major Al-Mashi, a Hungarian. That's the real one. Doesn't look like Ralph Fiennes, I'm afraid, but he's the one who decided, okay, I'm going to go there by plane. He convinced a rather wealthy couple here, Lord and Lady Clayton, to fly. And they had a plane. Anyway, move on. And that's the plane they went. You've seen the film. Can we move? Here he is at the cave of swimmers. He discovered the cave of swimmers. Let's move fast. Another one, who's a very good friend of mine, Carlo Bergman, who found the Abu Balas Trail. He found those stations that lead, they built not one, many. It's like fuel stations all over the desert. And we move. He's a rather interesting guy. Unfortunately, all the jars have been broken. But he managed to save some. Here is his journey from Dakhla in the middle. He went down and found the trail. But we had no physical evidence. We knew there was a trail, but there was no physical evidence of pharaohs being there. Egyptologists kept saying, no, they may have tried, but they never went there. There is no evidence. Nothing, zilch, not a word, not a sign, not a pot, no zero. Until 2007. To be precise, December 2007. Of all people, it's always outsiders. A Maltese businessman, who happens to be a friend of mine, Mark Borda, who decided to go to... Move fast. Let's go. These are the pots, by the way. These are modern pictures. They date from the 4th and 5th dynasty. Move over. It's very eerie because you get there and, there's no one. Let's move. Some more. There is Carlo Bergman. There is Mahmoud Marai, who went with Mark Borda, and they did an expedition in November, December of 2007, can you move, to Uwaynat. And they entered, illegally, the Sudanese border. And they explored on foot. Let me tell you, they're brave guys, because they walked for 9 days around there. It's quite an experience. You easily get lost. And they came across this. Pharaonic inscriptions 700 kilometers from the line. They're from the Pharaoh Mentuhotep II of the 12th dynasty. Pharaohs went there, and better still, they tell us why they went there. They tell us they went to meet their ancestors. They went to meet the people of the kingdom of Yam. Egyptologists thought that Yam was somewhere along the Nile, and they weren't quite sure. They now tell us this was a rendezvous place. And the big question is, where is Yam? And who are these people? Let's move. That's at the moment of discovery. It's at the heat of discovery. They took the picture. Let's move. Here are the wonderful pictures. Let's get a bit close up. Move, next picture. There they are. Now, it will not look like much. But move, go back, Fuzzy. Huh? It's actually not put right, but there is a house. There's pots. They have headgear. They wear bracelets and dresses, and you can't see it too well, but they have the same triangular dress as the ancient Egyptians. The only thing is that they are black, hence the title Black Genesis. And we know now, because of genetic studies, that we all come from what we call the African Eve. I gave a talk at I'm going to end on this because I'm going to get scolded. Leave you to read the book, huh? There was 800 people in the audience at the Washington University District of Columbia, most of them African Americans. And I was apparently the first to say, I'm a black man turned white. Because that's what we are. It's just that. It's just a bit of melatonin that changes in your skin. And this is such a wonderful realization that we all come from the same source and we're exactly the same people. The package is different, that's all. And look at history and the mess we made because of not understanding this. We're at the threshold not only of understanding this scientifically, but to have found these people. Read my book. Thank you very much.